Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about how to start your internal assessment. Okay, and the biggest piece of advice I can give you, first of all, is do not waste time. Okay, so don't waste time. Okay, get on with it. All right, because the more you leave it, the harder it's going to get, and your project won't be any good then. Okay, so don't waste time. Get on with it. Right. The most important thing to do first is think about what you want to investigate. Okay, so you might want to sit down and sort of do a mind map or a brain, just think about something you might want to research. So maybe start with one word. So for example, maybe you want to do something on football. Okay, or I don't know, it could be anything. Netball or sport, or start with one word and think about something you can do with that. Okay, I remember one student came to me and said, I want to do something on football, and they'd been racking their brains for ages, and came to me in desperation and said, can't think of anything. So we sat down and we put football in the middle of the whiteboard, and then said something along the lines of money and points, something like that, and they went, whoa, well, hang on, what about if we looked at how much money a club invests and when they end up in the Premier League, whether if you put more money in, do you end up winning more games? So that was their thing, right? And it ended up being a really, really good investigation. So, start with one word and see what you can do. And if you really, really get stuck, go speak to your teacher, because maybe they can give you examples of what other people have done in the past. Or I always give my students a kind of list of kind of project ideas. They can go away and think about it. But it's really, really up to you. It's got to be something I would stress to do something that you are interested in. Okay, what are you interested in? Do it on that, and don't make it trivial. Okay, I'm going to go back to that project that I mentioned in here. For example, the student. I mean, he did a really, really good job, and he did it really quickly as well. He didn't waste any time. But it did take. I mean, he's going to kill me for saying this, but he wasn't that into it. He wanted something quick and something he can get out in the way. So he just basically did it on this. So, and then he lost marks in terms of the interpretation results, because even though he can write very well, it wasn't something he was really, really engaged in. So make sure you're interested in the thing you're writing about, and it's a good investigation. Remember, you get marks on interpretation, so you want to be able to discuss. So remember, I told you about the person that did sort of like crime rates and employment in the different states across America. So they had all the different states. God, what are the states? New York, Utah, Minnesota, whatever, and then the employment rate and the crime rate, and compare them and did a correlation and so on, and the chi-squared, and it was really good because they talked about the social problems that potentially could be happening in America. So, lots of area for discussion. So think very long and hard about what you want to investigate first. Make sure it's something you are interested in. Okay. So what is your area of interest? Okay. Right. Okay. Now, once you've kind of like decided on what you want to do. Now, also, by the way, you don't have to do it on statistical stuff. Remember, you can do it on anything you want, right? Go look at the exemplars on the website. And there's different examples of what you could do. You may want to do some sort of experiment or a survey or something like that. You're interested in, for example, I think one person did something along the lines of something to do with driving licenses. How many attempts it took to pass the test. It wasn't the best one because they couldn't get enough data. But here's another example of what one person did. They looked at the correlation between the width of someone's hand and the length of someone's hand. They were quite interested in the golden ratio and something along the lines of that, and they wanted to see if there was a connection between everyone. So they basically got loads of people's. This is like a really bad drawing of hand, but they basically surveyed loads of people and measured the length and the width of their hand, and did some correlation tests on that. I think they were interested in that. I think they wanted to talked about biology and that sort of thing. And I didn't mark that paper, so I don't know much about it. But you could do a test, and my favourite one was the memory test to do with age. So they had basically they had a table of items, and each person had like 5 minutes to memorize the things on the table, and then the things were covered up with a blanket or something like that. And then they had about a maximum of 10 minutes to recall, or I'm not sure if it's 10 minutes, but whatever it was, 6 minutes or whatever. A maximum of so much time to recall as many different things, and they wrote down the person's age and how many things they could remember, and they did a correlation on that, and it was really, really interesting because they got some sort. I think there was some sort of correlation there. It wasn't like a strong correlation, but there was something to discuss there, and they were quite interested in memory because in their sort of discussions of the results, they talked about how some people had a method for remembering things. They kind of made a rhyme and that sort of thing, and the young kids were somehow better than the there was a freak result because some of the 11-year-olds were better at it than the 18-year-olds because they had a rhyme, a method of they made up a rhyme or a story to remember. So there's lots of things you can do. You don't have to go online and get data. You can do something on an experiment or a test. Now remember though, if you're going to do like a test or an experiment, start it early. Okay, do not leave it. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Oops, start it earlier rather than later. Okay, because one person made a mistake and they had to do it all over again at the last minute, and they worked their backsides off and managed to turn it around, but they basically wanted, it was a text message issue again. They had a text message, and they timed how long it took. This is a stopwatch. Timed how long it took to write the message, and they wrote down the age of the person. But what they didn't do is they didn't think about how they were going to do the tests. So they got like 5 11-year-olds and 12 18-year-olds and 2 25-year-olds, and the data was skewed because they had more 18-year-olds than they had 11-year-olds, and so they went back and did it a bit more systematically, and where they asked 10 11-year-olds to do it, and 10 12 and 10 13-year-olds and 14-year-olds and 15 and 16 and 17 and 18. So they were more systematic about it, and that's the way you got to be, right? You got to think very hard. So they didn't realize that until the last minute, so they had to go back and do it all over again. So think very long and hard about how you're going to collect that data. Okay, remember, stratified sampling, or maybe in some cases it might be best to just pick people randomly, or systematic things like picking 10 people from each age group. Think very long and hard about how you're going to get that data, but do it early. Okay, do it earlier rather than later. Okay, now once you have got your data, what do you then do with it? Okay, so let's say you do your survey, you do your test, or you go online, you get the data. The next thing to do is really, really quickly run it through Excel. Okay, so run the whole thing through Excel. I'm going to give you an example. I'm just going to do something right now. Okay, so here's Google. I'm going to get some data of something. I'm going to go to Data Bank, which is a good place to get some data. Okay, so let's go to their database. Oops, no, go back. It's if you click on indicators it takes you to this. So it's got data on all the different countries, and in this little box it's got like GDP in US dollars as percentages, literacy rate, imports of goods. And so let's say I want to do on GDP versus something like CO2 emissions. Let's do something like that. Here's CO2 emissions. Let's see if it loads up. Okay, and you download the data in Excel. I'm just going to quickly get some data, so I'm going to pause it. I'm going to go get it in Excel. So okay, so alright, so we're recording, yeah, okay. Right, so here's some data I've got off the data website. Data bank. What was it again? Let me just double check what I actually downloaded. So CO2 emissions, and I think no, hang on. This needs to be deleted. CO2 emissions versus what have I done here? Right, control paste on that. Just paste it in here. Okay, oh god, right. Done it again. What have I done? Well, let me just copy and paste this. Okay. I don't see what I've done wrong here, right, okay. It's giving me the same set of data, right, let me just... Okay, let me pause it again, I'll go get the correct data. Okay, so I've finally managed to get some data off Databank. Okay, it's not the best website to use. Feel free to use anything else, you know, or remember you could do a survey. But here's just some of the common things, pitfalls first of all. First of all, there's an obvious mistake when I've collected this data. So here's GDP, and here is CO2 emissions. Now, first of all, notice they're different years, which is, you know, automatically it's pointless doing your investigation now, right? Because that's 2012, that's 2011. What's the point in comparing them, right? Also, if you don't just copy and paste things off the internet, you know, remember your stratified sampling, remember your method of collecting the data, because you could make an easy mistake, because you could just assume that each country is there in order. But, for example, this cell is Barbados and this cell is Barbados, so and that's the GDP and that's the CO2, so they're okay. But somewhere down here, I bet there's a country missing, okay, or one country does not match the same row. So, you know, you just don't make simple mistakes like that. Now, once you've got your data and you're happy with it, and there's no silly mistakes like the years being different and the countries not matching up on the row for row. Now, before we even begin. Okay, remember, if you're going to do a statistical survey and you want to, and your ambitions are to do things like Pearson's and chi-squared, you want to do it on two variables, okay? You want some two variable data. Don't do it on things like one person made the mistake of doing something like male v female and how long they could time a text message, and they try to do Pearson's on that, and it doesn't really work, okay? Because one set of data is like quantitative and the other's, you know, qualitative, so it doesn't quite work. You know, two variable data where both variables are some sort of numerical value is best. if you're going to do if you want to do Pearson's for definite. Okay, remember you could have male versus female, but then you can only do chi-squared on that, right? So just be careful about the type of data you're going to get. Now the first thing you want to do is, if you've got numerical data, the first thing you can do is just run Pearson's on it. So do it quickly on Excel. Okay, so this is not what you would do in your actual investigation, but if you want to see what Pearson's value there is, just go into formula. Okay, I'm just going to go to more functions and Pearson's, and I'm going to select this column, and I'm going to select, obviously select all the data. I'm just being ultra lazy. I press OK. It says division by 0 for some reason. I don't know why that is. Okay, maybe it's because it's not set up as data or something. Let me just right click that, format cell. If that happens, what you want to do is go to protection, font, no. Okay, I think, okay, right, okay, it's convert to number, yeah. Okay, there we go, that's all right. Sometimes when you copy things off the internet, it copies it as text rather than a number. Alright, so there's your Pearson's, minus 0.35252. I'll tell you what, it's probably best to maybe just do quickly do a scatter graph on this. So let me select that and that. Just do a scatter on it. Obviously you want to do it on the whole data, not just the what I'm just being ultra lazy, but look at the scatter diagram, look at the Pearson's. Is it worth going ahead with? Okay, so I mean, can you see anything here? I'm not quite sure. Pearson's is quite low. It might not be worth doing, so you may go on to do something else, but do it quickly. Just run it through Excel really quickly, and then check to see whether it's worth going ahead with. Okay, so do that first. Okay, now if you are doing something that's going to take you some time, like a statistical test or an experiment, or you're gathering some data, then just go ahead with what you're doing. Okay, even if it doesn't give you any particular correlation, or think long and hard about something that may potentially give you some correlation. Okay, but if there's something that's not, it's just like terrible like this, then it's not worth going ahead with, and then maybe it's worthwhile doing something else instead. But run it through Excel, double check it, run it past your teacher as well. It's probably best to ask them as well, get their opinion on it. And then do your tests, then go on to do the next bit. Okay, but remember, if you're going to do Pearson's, if you want to do Pearson's, you want to have two variables, and then they really should be numerical values. Okay, so a column of numerical data and a second separate column of numerical data, whereas two different things like maybe height and weight, or GDP and literacy rates, or something like that. Then you can also go on to do chi-squared if you wanted to. If you're going to do something like male v female and then some sort of test or something, the only thing that's open to you to do is to do chi-squared. Okay, so if you've got one column where it's like gender or something, and another column where it's numerical value, the only further process that you can attempt is chi-squared. So think long and hard beforehand as to what you want to do. Okay, so because depending on the type of data you get, you can do Pearson's and chi-squared, or only chi-squared is open to you. So think long and hard about that. Okay. If the project is really simple like this one, CO2 versus chi-squared, sorry, CO2 versus GDP, it's probably not going to get you many marks because you're not going to have much scope to interpret things. And the most important thing is, to begin with, think about the type of data you're going to end up with, what's open to you, and if you're going to do an experiment or a survey, start it early. Okay, start it sooner rather than later. Do not leave it to the last minute. Okay, don't do that, because if you do, you're going to screw up. Alright, so don't leave it to the last minute, start it early. So that's how you can start your investigation. Think about brainstorming some with one word. Think about the type of data you're going to collect. Run it through Excel if you can get the data quickly, and then check to see whether it's worth going ahead with or not. Okay, this process took me 5 minutes to do, and then I can judge. You know what? I mean, I can even if I click on that, I can drag it down even further, and then run back to the top and see what type of graph I get. I mean, there's no point. There is no point going ahead with that. Okay, but remember to do your stratified sampling and that sort of thing. Okay, so think very long and hard about what you want to investigate. Get the data really, really quickly, run it through Excel, see if it's worth going ahead with. Do that earlier on. Okay, I'm going to stop it there because that's all I can talk about now. In the next clip, I'm going to talk to you about how you do Pearsons by hand, and how you can do chi-squared by hand, and so on.